Hey, Money Masters. Good to see you all. Welcome back to another episode of The Wealth Feed. I am Lexi Johnson. I am an international speaker. I am a licensed financial coach and strategist. I am leader of missionaries and so many other things that doesn't matter at this time. Anyway, welcome to The Wealth Feed. If you have been with us over the last uh, 3 weeks, we started this series on getting organized in our finances, getting our financial lives right. And today we're going to be talking about mastering debt. But I want to give a brief recap about what we talked about last week. If you have not seen last week's episode, make sure that you go back and do so. You can catch it in probably the easiest place to catch it would be on YouTube. So just go to YouTube, look for Money Mastery for Her 54, and go to the live tab, and then click on that last episode, the Wealth Seed episode. So last week we talked about godly stewardship. What a great session that was. So we talked about what that meant. I even talked about how that was actually the sexiest part of becoming financially free. And so you'll have to go and catch the episode so that you can understand fully why I called it that. But ideally, what I did was share with you a strategy or strategies for mastering your day in and day out management of your finances or operations of your finances, right? Doing it in a way that will show God that you are trustworthy, because His word says that if you are faithful with little, right, then He can give you more. Okay. That is not a direct quote from the Bible, but the scripture does say that. Okay. So today we're talking about mastering debt. A lot of people like to, call it managing debt. And I do not like using the term managing. I like to use the term mastering. What is the difference, Lexi, between managing and mastering? Oh, there is a world of difference between the two. And with managing, listen, if you've ever used that in a sentence and you're like, oh, I just managed to get some bread today for the house, or I managed to, it's like you just barely got it in. Or also managing can just be kind of like, okay, I'm just trying to keep things, you know, as they are. Okay. Just managing. Okay. We don't want to just manage. We want to master. Okay. We want to master debt. Now, I don't necessarily want to say complete debt elimination either. However, there's some debt, yes, that we do need to eliminate, but there's debt that I also think that we can leverage. So we're going to be talking about that. And of course, we are going to be mentioning the biblical principles related to debt. Okay. So that's what we're going to do today. Let's get into it. All right. So let's talk about good debt versus bad debt. Is it a thing? Right? Well, it's certainly a thing. But what is actually good debt? What is actually bad debt? Well, most people will say, I think most people agree on what bad debt is, right? It's debt that's really used for consumption. It doesn't provide a return. Okay. You're tacking on a lot of interest, like credit card debt, right? So most of the times people take their credit cards and they're buying things or getting things that will not provide them any return. Now, I'm not saying that is, all totally bad, right? We'll talk more about that in a minute. However, there's this thing called interest. And so if we are not strategically using our credit cards, even if we're buying things that don't give us a return, if we're not strategically using our credit cards and paying those things significantly down or off, right, before that next interest cycle, you can get yourself into trouble eventually, right? If you're just paying the minimums, the minimums, it is like you be in debt. Depending on the amount of debt, it can be 10, 15 years. It can be until death, right? So you want to be very strategic about that. We're going to talk about that a little later. But yeah, so that might be one example of bad debt. Another example might be a payday loan. We're going to talk about that later on as well. Okay. Hey, Pastor Bonfils, good to see you today. Thank you for watching all the way from Kenya. So we're going to talk about that as well. But what is good debt? Now, some people say that good debt is investing in your future, which I will agree. But how are you investing in your future, right? Some people say if you invest in your college education, right, that is good debt. Some people say that if you, take out a loan for your, take out a mortgage, right, that is good debt. And I'm going to beg to differ, right? And I'm sure that with a lot of people, my answer won't be popular, but my answer is the truth. Okay? For the most part, for the most part, for the most part. College debt, let's talk about it. Okay? So everything, go fill out for your student loans. It's good debt to have. But the truth of the matter, for the majority of people who have taken out college student loans, right? There are people who have these student loans. They're thinking, oh, once I get out of college, I'll start working, I'll pay these student loans off, and it'll be all good. But we don't factor in life happening, right? We don't factor in that I may not get a job that would actually help me to pay these student loans off very quickly. We don't factor in that there are just life things that happen, right? Divorce or loss of employment or all kinds of things that can happen to us and that will, interrupt paying off the student loans. Then you have the interest that, continues to accrue. And then you have the companies that will, defer or forbear, and they will do that into oblivion. Okay. But they're not really doing anything to help you, right? And so people say that's good debt. I'm like, nah, I don't think so. I don't think that is good debt. The only way it's good debt is that when you come out of college, you can pay that sucker off very quickly. Okay. But that has not been the case for the majority of the people who have student loans. People have carried those things to their death, right? So I don't know that that's a good, thing. I don't know that it's good debt. In my book, it's not good debt. Okay. Let's talk about a mortgage. People say that that's good debt, right? To say that you have a house and all of that is like status. It's like part of the American dream. And, now you've got this loan, it has interest, you've got this 30-year, 15-year, 30-year, whatever year mortgage. By the time you're done paying for it, you will have paid twice, 3 times the amount. Is that good debt? It could be, possibly, right? It possibly could be. And it all depends on what you do with the asset. Okay. Are you leveraging the asset so that it can make you a return so that you can pay off the debt? That's the key, right? So, to be clear, here at Money Mastery for Her, what is good debt? Good debt is debt that you strategically leverage, okay, so that it yields a return and you can take that return and pay off the debt. That's what we call good debt, okay? Everything else, bad debt. Everything else is bad debt. All right. Debt has an impact on our financial health. It has an impact on our stress levels. And that's something that we need to pay attention to. And one of the things that I'm also going to talk about is the psychology of debt, because debt does not begin when you actually make the transaction to put yourself in debt. Debt started long before that. Okay. But let's just talk about some of some of the things that can result from the stress of debt. Some of the things that can um, affect you, affect your health, affect your physical health, your mental health, your social health, all of that, right? So, anxiety, stress, frustration, depression, these are all things that um, debt can cause, right? Because what we don't understand is that, your money, the, the health of your money or lack thereof is all connected to your mental, emotional, and physical health. It is all connected. We're not necessarily taught that in a very holistic way. Um, and so we don't, before we even take the action to get into debt, we're not even considering, these other things that taking out the debt could cause, right? So anxiety, stress, frustration, depression, you can have sleep problems, you can have headaches, you can have digestive issues, you can have reduced concentration, you can have impaired decision making, right? And some people are like, oh, aren't you kind of over the top? Not at all. If you really just sit down and think about it and think about a time where you were in some financial despair and see whether or not if any of these things are true. Now, I'm not saying everybody has all of these things, but likely most of us can relate that money at some point in our lives has caused one of these things. But not only that, as I mentioned earlier, debt starts in the mind. Okay. Debt starts in the mind. It does not start when we are at the place where we are consuming and we swipe the card to put it on credit or we sign the paperwork for a loan. It doesn't start there. Okay. Um, Debt, what all of that stuff is just the manifestation. Okay. It is the manifested behaviors that lead to debt. Okay, so let's talk about like how this starts in the mind. If there is worry, right? If you're worried about your bill next month, you're worried about some kind of large financial obligation that you may have, right? This affects your financial health. This affects your behaviors, okay? You may feel like you are under the gun. You may feel like there's pressure. You may feel overwhelmed. And so therefore, because of, then you're worrying. And so now you're going to probably make a different set of decisions because you are worried versus another set of decisions that you may make out of a clear mind, out of a clear head, out of a clear space, right? So debt starts in the mind. It can start with worry. It can start with low self-esteem. It can start with lack of confidence, right? And I bet a lot of us has never even thought about how these things that I'm mentioning, and I'm going to mention some more, how these things have an impact on our spending behavior, how these things have an impact on our financial health. Who would have thought like a lack of confidence would manifest in some type of financial issue, right? But let me give you an example. Because of your lack of confidence, right? Maybe now you feel like you have to look the part for everybody else, okay? You're going to overplay what's going on out here so that you can appear like you've got it all together, right? So what does that mean? You're probably buying clothes that you don't need at prices that are outrageous. You probably went and got the car that you can't necessarily afford, right? So behind the scenes, you are in all kind of crunches trying to, make your payment every month, right? Your payment is upward of $600, $700, $800 a month, right? Or because you're trying to show everybody else, you went and got this house that you can't afford, right? All because of either low self-esteem or lack of confidence, right? Some other things that can cause, and this is why I'm saying debt starts in the mind. So here are some other things where all of this starts in the mind. Um, Things that you went through in your childhood. Maybe you learned some maladaptive behaviors as it relates to money, right? These are the things that are happening subconsciously because we are watching the adults around us do what they do, and we are picking up those things consciously or subconsciously, right? And so if you have parents who spend everything they get, right? Got to have the best of everything, or whatever the maladaptive behaviors are, subconsciously you are picking up those behaviors, and now it is having an effect on uh, how the fact that you've placed yourself in debt as a young adult, as a middle-aged adult, as an older adult, right? If it's never addressed, right? Your attitude towards risk, your attitudes towards your biases about money, all of these things, your level of financial literacy, okay? And that is, listen, y'all, one of the areas that that really irks me is this area of financial literacy, right? Because you have these banks, if you work at a bank, I'm not necessarily coming at you. I am talking about the system of banking, but you might want to you might want to consider the system you're working for. But anyway, um, these banks, they have people that go in and teach financial literacy, and as much financial literacy are they teaching as they are out and teaching. It's like things should be, there should be more people that are having success. Now, granted, it's like the people also have to do their part. But what about the people who are doing their part? You told them to budget, they're budgeting. You told them to have a checking account, they have it. You told them to, you're telling them about, how getting a mortgage and all of that type of stuff, is good debt, right? And why would they tell you that? Because listen, at the end of the day, banks are a business and they're trying to get new clients. So yes, they want you to open that checking account. Yes, they're going to teach you about mortgages and things like that because they want you to get one. They're going to talk to you about personal loans because they want you to get one. And I'm not saying any of these things are bad in and of themselves, but what I am saying is they're not going to teach you how to do it strategically because they are a business and that's how they make their money. Okay, they loan you money, charge you interest, right? And they live to see many more days while you are dying on the inside because you have all of this debt as you were taught to in this financial literacy class. Okay, so that's why I have an issue all the time when people talk about financial literacy class. Yeah, what kind of financial literacy class are you going to? Okay, I promise you, you're going to one sponsored by a bank. They're not going to teach you how to get free. Banks are a business. Okay, let's keep that in mind. All right, there's a whole system out there. All right, so those things, depending on what you learned in your financial literacy, all of these things, this debt starts with all of these things. Okay, debt starts with all of those things. Debt starts with what are the economic conditions. Okay, and I'm not saying that these are all the reasons, but these are a combination of things that work together where you end up demonstrating the behaviors you're demonstrating regarding your money. Okay, good or bad. So, economic conditions, right? Inflation, interest rates, government policies, right? All of these things can have an effect as well. Job loss, medical emergencies, illnesses. It goes on and on and on and on and on. I'm going to tell you just about any and everything that's happening to you in your life is going to manifest in your financial behaviors. And the sooner that we understand that, okay, that all these areas of our lives are connected, the better then that we can, the better that we'll get, okay, in all the areas, right? If your physical health is not good, it's going to affect your financial health. If your financial health is not good and you got some physical health issues to take care of, that's going to be a problem, right? People are not going to hospitals or things like that because they don't have the financial resources. So they just don't go and see about themselves, right? So we must understand that debt is not in this isolated compartment, okay? Debt does not start with me going into a place of business and running my credit card or signing loan papers. That is not where debt starts. Debt started a long time ago. It started when you were growing up, and what were the money habits that you learned? It started with, how do you deal with anxiety and stress and frustration? It starts with, all of those things that we talked about. How is your self-confidence? How is your self-esteem? How is your, how is your mental clarity? It started with all of that. Okay. It starts with all of that. If you have some childhood traumas, right? Some people say, well, that doesn't have to do with it has a lot to do with finances. Everything to do with finances, right? If you're someone who, likes to present yourself as grandiose, you want to present yourself in more than what you are, that has an effect on what you do with your money. Okay. So the sooner we can accept that, the better. Here's a scripture reference that I want to give to you guys as it relates to death. Proverbs 22:7. This is, I'm reading from the NIV. It says, the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. Very simple, guys. Okay. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. This is why in the kingdom of God, it is necessary that we have kingdom wealth builders. It is necessary that we have kingdom financiers, because if you are kingdom and you are in charge, you are going to do the right thing by everyone. Okay? So the rich rule over the poor does not necessarily have to be a bad thing if God's kingdom citizens were the ones, right, who had the control in that way. And then we would even be saying, we don't have control. This is all God's money, right? And so everybody would be dealt with according to God's economy and the principles that he has set up for his economy, right? The borrower is slave to the lender. Listen, anytime you owe somebody something, anytime you owe some money somewhere, you're a slave. You gotta, pay when they say pay. You gotta pay the interest. You gotta pay. That's the, that is, you gave up. You gave up some of your power, right? In order to have something. You wanted a car, okay? So you gave up some rights so that you could have this car, right? So listen, debt can be a burden. It can be a burden if you don't know how to leverage it correctly. It can be not only a burden, but it can hold you in bondage, okay? If you do not know how to leverage it appropriately, okay? And that is not a place where you want to be. That is not a place where you want to be. All right. So let's now discuss some strategies for paying off debt, right? How many of you want to know a couple of strategies for paying off debt? Drop one in the chat, whether you're watching live or watching the replay. If you want to know some strategies for paying off debt, drop one in the chat. Okay. All right. Now, before I talk about some very well-known proven strategies. The first thing that I want to say is here's a strategy. Patience. Okay. A lot of times we go and we get into debt because we are impatient. We got to have the car now. We got to have the house now. We got to have I don't care what it is. It could just be a laptop, but you don't have all of the money to pay it in full. So you finance it. It could be a phone, a cell phone. You don't have all of the money now. So you're going to finance it, right? Because we are impatient. We don't want to discipline ourselves and set aside money for the things that we want, then so that we can go pay for these things, right? And not be in bondage. Because listen, anytime you finance anything, right? It is a certain type of bondage if you're not very strategic on leveraging the debt that you get yourself into. All right. So you want some strategy, patience. Okay. Be patient. Be patient. We don't have to have everything right now. Who are you trying to prove stuff to? Right? We shouldn't be trying to prove anything to anyone. We shouldn't be worried about what neighbor A or neighbor C has, right? I'm only worried about B and what's going on in B. I don't care what it looks like to neighbor A or neighbor C. And neighbor A and neighbor C may not even care. It's just the fact that you think everybody else cares. You think that everybody is looking. You think that you got to, because you're the one that's looking, right? So patience, okay? Patience. All right. This is strategy. Now I am going to talk about some, mastering debt strategies here in a minute, but honestly, I'm telling you, if you can just be patient. Sometimes, I tell people, sometimes if you can just commit to putting aside a certain amount of money for about 3 to 5 years, you can buy the land for your house and you can buy the supplies for your house outright. And then you can pay, a contractor to put it up. And you don't have to spend 30 years or more in bondage if we would just exercise some patience. Okay. Now, if you can't exercise patience, right, here's something else that you can do when you're looking to make these big or small purchases that you're going to finance, because some people are really good even to drive up to Starbucks with a credit card and put it on their credit card. Okay. Listen, I chuckle a little bit. It's not judgment because I'm laughing at things that I used to do. How do you think I know these examples, right? Because I used to do this dumb stuff too. Okay. So not knowing, that I'm really hurting myself. So in addition to patience, the next thing that you can ask yourself when you're going to make a big purchase and you're talking about financing it is, how are you going to leverage this debt? Or how is this asset going to yield a return for me? All right. So let's take the house, right? You want a house. It's the American dream to have a house. You feel in the pressure to get a house because you are in your 30s or your 40s and you've not had the opportunity to get a house yet. So you're feeling the societal pressure of having a house, or maybe it's family pressure, like, what are you doing over there? Your brother has a house, your sister has one. What are you doing? Right. And so for whatever reason, you are now in the market looking for a house. The question to yourself is, I'm financing, so that means I'm in debt. I'm going to be in debt. How am I going to leverage that debt? All right. So maybe it's, I got this house with a nice walk-in basement so that I can rent out this basement part at any time and generate some income to help me pay down this debt even faster. Right? Same with a car. How can I leverage the debt on this car? Does it make sense? I work from home. I don't really have to go too many places. Does it make sense that I would allow someone to rent my vehicle, a couple days a week or something? Now you have to weigh these things out, right? Because certainly if you're going to start renting out the vehicle, there's, wear and tear that comes with, there's risk with everything. Okay. But again, you'd be like, how am I going to leverage this debt? Okay. How am I going to leverage this debt? Can I have this asset yield a return that is higher, okay, than the interest that they're charging me? Okay. That's ideal. But can it return anything to even help you make payment? Okay. So that's how you have to start thinking, right? When you go into a store and you're like, oh, this is the outfit. And now you're like, I gotta have it now, but I don't have the money now. I'm pulling out this credit card. It's like, okay, ask yourself, is this thing gonna yield a return for me? Or is there any way that I could leverage this? Can I be patient and wait, maybe one more month, maybe 2 more weeks? Some of you don't even have, some of you may only have to wait a week or something like that. But we're so impatient, we got to have things now, right? So patience. And then the second thing is asking yourself these questions. How can I leverage this debt? What purpose will this thing that I'm purchasing serve? How can I monetize it? Is it going to give me a return? Ask yourself anything like that, right? So now let's talk about some strategies. Let's talk about some strategies for mastering debt. Okay. Now, what does it mean to master debt? It means that debt does not have a control over you. You are not living this life where your money is telling you what to do, right? It's dictating where your money is going. No, you are dictating. We talked about this last week with allocating. So make sure that you check that out. But you are you are mastering your debt in a way that will allow you to pay it off, okay, and pay it off quickly. We want to minimize the interest, okay, and we want to minimize the length of time that we are in debt. So here are two proven strategies, and I'm sure many of you have heard them before. But the question is, have you put it in place and have you been disciplined enough to see it through? Okay. Because some people would be like, oh, yeah, we worry about that, blah, blah, blah. But have you done it and have you been consistent? Right. So one strategy is what they call the debt snowball method. And that's where you pay off the smallest debts first so that you can build momentum. Right. Then another strategy is called the debt avalanche method. This is my personal favorite, but that's just me. You pay off your debts with the highest interest rates first so that you can save on your interest payments. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about these. I'm going to expound upon these, but I want to share another verse with you. It's Romans 13:8. It says, let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. Okay. So there is this, it is important. Okay. Even in the word of God, it tells us how important it is to live debt free. Okay. It is important to focus on so that we can focus on other things like serving people, loving people, being kind to people. If you have not checked out my series on Kingdom Disciples Training Center, it's another channel, KDTC. On Wednesday mornings at 7:30, I've been talking about the fruit of the Spirit. So this is so funny that I happen to be mentioning this now. But God wants us to be focused on those types of things. But when you have debt, you can't be focused on those types of things. You're worried. You got health issues. Your head hurts. All of this stuff because of money. And you can now you cannot focus on the thing that God would have you focus on, right? So let no debt remain outstanding. Okay. If you have debt, make sure that you have already strategized how you're going to leverage it. How's it going to yield a return so that you can pay it off from the return, right? We'll talk more about that in a minute. So let's talk about the debt snowball method. So the debt snowball method, you're going to list all of your debts from smallest to the largest balance. Okay. Yes. Sit down, list it all out. A lot of people like to just, okay, I got everything in my head. No, you don't. Okay. I've been doing this work long enough now. Okay. Way over, what I've been doing since 2012. Okay. So I've been doing this work long enough now, and you people like, oh yeah, I got that stuff in my head. I'll be ready when I'm telling them to bring in their information, so that we can begin working on a financial game plan. Oh yeah, I know all the stuff, in my head, blah blah blah. And they do not. And I'll be like, nope, I don't want you to come in here giving me stuff off your head. This is why I'm giving you this list of things to bring, to bring with you: bank statements, credit card statements, da 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 da. Because when I start to ask, how much do you owe on this credit card, and what's the interest rate, and what is the monthly payment, and whatever the questions that I have associated with that, I don't want to hear, well, it's about, well, I think, no, right? And most people are not walking around knowing their interest rates for every credit card they have off the top of their mind. I've not seen it yet. I'm not saying there isn't somebody out there, because I do believe that there's somebody out there who can do that, but they are very far and few in between, right? So you're going to list all your debts from smallest to largest. Okay. Write it out. You're going to make minimum payments on all the debts except the smallest one. On the smallest one, you're going to pay as much as possible towards the smallest debt. So when I'm sitting with my clients, we usually, because I've already looked at their income and expenses at this time, where money is going, what's coming, what do they actually have, all that kind of stuff. We've already looked at that. And so we've already determined what is the extra amount that they could put towards a debt snowball or a debt avalanche method. Okay. So you pay as much as possible towards that smallest debt, whatever that amount was determined. The smallest debt, let's just say the minimum payment each month is $25. You can put in extra $100. So now you're paying $125. Okay. Once the smallest debt is paid off, everything else, you still pay the minimums. Once the smallest debt is paid off, now you take that that amount that you were paying on that card, and then you put it on the next one. So now you take that 125, you put it on the next card. Maybe your next card is $50 minimum payment. So you take that 125 plus the 50, which makes it 175, and you are now paying that extra amount on the second card, minimum on everything else. And so then you continue to do that until you get out of debt. That will free up, that will help you to pay your debt off in less time. Okay. It could reduce some of your interest, but it is not the strategy that will help you to pay the least interest. Okay. The strategy that's going to help you pay the least interest is the debt avalanche method. Okay. This is my personal favorite, but to each his own. Some people need that small win first. Okay. Because with the debt avalanche method, your debt with the highest interest rate, maybe a large one, and it may be a little discouraging to start with that. You may not feel like you're making any progress. So some people actually need the small win first. So you would do a debt snowball method, right? Or you could do a combination of the two. Okay. And I've done all of these with the clients that I serve. So list all your debts from highest to lowest interest rate. Okay. Not the amount, but the interest rate. So from highest to lowest. You're going to make minimum payments on all the debts except the one with the highest interest rate. With that one, you're going to pay as much as possible towards the debt with the highest interest rate. So again, I'm like, okay, I got an extra $100 to put towards debt, I'm going to, put that extra 100 to the card that has the highest, or to the debt that has the highest interest rate, along with the minimum payment. Okay. Once the highest interest rate debt is paid off, you move on to the next highest, and then the next highest, and then the next highest. And it may seem like this would take longer because you're thinking about the amount. Okay. But this actually is a lot quicker because you're attacking the largest interest rate first. Okay. Remember, interest is the thing that keeps you in debt for years and years and years and years. Okay. So those are two proven, tried, tested methods, okay, for mastering your debt. All right. If you have any questions about them, drop your questions in the chat. And if you're out there and you're watching and you have actually used one of these methods and you have been successful because you were disciplined, because listen, the methods work. If you're not successful with it, it's because you're not disciplined. The methods work. Okay, they work. I know it from personal experience. I know it from working with many clients over the years. The ones who were disciplined to follow it through, it works. Okay. So I want to hear from you. If you have used either the debt snowball method or the debt avalanche method, and you saw it through to the end, and you are now living debt free, right? You're now living debt free. Or if you're not debt free, you have mastered being able to leverage debt, right? But it's not controlling you. Okay. Psalm 37:21 says, "The wicked borrow and do not repay, but the righteous give generously." So it is important that you repay your debt. Okay. Very important. It is very irresponsible to go borrow and then not repay, because you had given the creditor your word that you were going to be responsible and pay this debt. And as kingdom citizens, we need to keep our word. Okay. I know that we have things out here like bankruptcy and all this kind of stuff, and that's fine if you absolutely have to take advantage of it. But let's not make that a habit, right? There are people who make that a habit. File bankruptcy, let some time pass, they get a fresh, clean slate, an opportunity to do again. They get into debt again. And then, and it's just a cycle over and over and over and over again. And that happens. And the main reason why that can happen, you pay off your debt. Okay. And you have no plan for what you're going to do with that money now once you're done. And that plan has to be established long before you're out of debt. It's established at the beginning. The same when you are putting your plan together using the debt snowball method or the debt avalanche method, you should already have in mind when the debt is paid off, the allocating. Remember, this is what this money is going to do after that. Should already be a plan in place. Okay. All right. Okay. So I want to try and wrap up here. So let me give you some actionable tips. Okay. I already gave you some. We're going to kind of review. I'm going to give you some actionable tips. List all of your debts. That's number one. You want to create a comprehensive list of all of your debts. That includes the amounts, it includes the interest rates, and it includes the minimum payments. Okay. And when you're writing your debt out, it's not enough to say Capital One credit card, then keep on going, this credit card, that credit card. No, Capital One credit card. How much do you owe on it? I owe $1,000. The interest rate is 30%. You know what I'm saying? The minimum payment is $25. Whatever it is, that's what you need to write out. So a comprehensive list of all of your debts, name of the debt, the creditor, the interest rates, the minimum payments, and total balance, right? All of that. Got it? the name of the debt or the creditor, the interest rate, the minimum payments, total balance. Write it all out. Okay, for everything you owe. Yes, write it out for everything you owe. All right. You're going to decide on a repayment strategy. Is it the debt snowball? Is it the debt avalanche? Y'all already know my favorite. Okay. But do what suits you, because either way, it's going to help you to master your debt. Okay. So decide on a repayment strategy. And then you want to make sure that you have funds allocated. My nose is just itchy, y'all. I know y'all see me keep on, but I don't know why it's itching so much. I have no idea. Okay, anyway. Make sure that you have it allocated. We talked about allocating last week. Go check it out. But this would be part of your household expenses category. Okay, this would be part of your obligations, and you will have already said ahead of time, this is the extra amount that I could put towards my debt repayment strategy. That extra $100 plus, whatever else is owed on the others, it'll show in those credit cards already. Okay, so it's already part of your household expense allocation. That is if you are setting up your finances in the way that I have been instructing you over the last few weeks. Okay. If you're going to do something else, well, go ahead. Right. And I say that I'm not being funny, because this is how we do as humans, right? We always think that, oh, I have a better way. Oh, I can't, blah, blah, blah. And this is not to say that that no one ever has a better way. Yeah, certainly someone might come up with a better way. But for the most part, we won't have a better way. We just want to do what we want to do, if we're honest with ourselves, right? So this becomes part of your allocations, and it's part of your household expense category. Okay. That extra amount that you're designating towards your debt goes there. All right. So let me give you those actionable tips one more time. List all your debts, a comprehensive list of your debts. Choose your debt repayment strategy, and then allocate your debt repayment, that acceleration amount. Okay, allocate it. All right. Now listen, if you get any windfalls, extra income, many financial literacy people will tell you to put that towards debt. And I'm going to tell you that you don't want to put all of it towards debt, if any at all. Okay. What you want to do is find a way for that windfall money or that extra income. You want to find a way for it to invest it in something, yield more interest, take the interest, pay down the debt. Why do you want to do it that way? If you get extra income or some type of windfall and you put it all towards your debt, what happens? Zero, you're down to zero. Okay. You are down to zero again. And guess what happens because you're down to zero again? You're back to worrying how you're feeling good that first, I paid off all my debt. I paid off, this, I paid that off. I paid this off. I paid that off. Everything is paid off. They all got their money and I'm sitting here on a big fat zero. So now what? Something's going to come up. You're going to need something and you're going to be like, I got to use this credit card again. I got to go get some small type of loan again. I got to go do this or that again. And then you start that whole cycle over again. We have to learn how to be focused on generating income, and not income where you have to show up all the time and make the income, right? Sometimes, a lot of times you need to be having different ways where that income can go and be invested and you can, yield a return. It is one of the favorite things that I love working with for my clients, right? I teach them how to take funds, invest it, yield a return, take the return, and then pay off the debt. Right? And it is such it's so rewarding to see them see it work, you know, and for them to now be excited about where first they came to me like all worried about, oh my gosh, I got this debt, I want to pay it off, pay it off. It was just like a monkey on my back, yada yada yada. But now watching them and saying, okay, I got this much money in, what can I do with this to multiply it? And then from the yield, take that, pay the debt, and then I still have this base amount, right? So I got $1,000 windfall. I'm just, you know what I'm saying? I got $1,000 windfall. Most people take that $1,000, just pay off whatever they can with it, and they're down to zero, and then back in the same old rut. Okay, but if I take this $1,000, and I don't know, I lend it out. Okay, I become a lender, right? In an official way, right? You lend it out to someone in real estate or whatever, right? And I make a return. Now I take that return and I use that return to pay down the debt. Be patient with your paying down the debt process, okay? Because just taking your windfall and trying to apply it all to debt, you'll be running that circle for life, okay? So I hope that you understood that. All right. One another scripture reference, Proverbs 3:27-28. Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it is in your power to act. Do not say to your neighbor, come back tomorrow and I'll give it to you, when you already have it with you. So in other words, hey, missionary Amador Zafra, good to see you. Good to see you. More blessing to you and yours as well. So what is this verse saying? To repay your debts in a timely manner. Okay. If you told someone, I'm going to, I borrowed this from you, I'm going to give it back to you Friday, give it back to them on Friday. Okay. Don't be like, well, or putting up some kind of excuse because you just want to hold on to it for a little bit. Timely repayment of your debts. Okay. That fulfills your moral responsibility to meet your financial obligations. Okay. Now, every now and then it may happen. Like, you did not intend, you had every intention of returning it on Friday. Something crazy happens. I don't know, holiday at the bank. You can't get the money out. I don't know. Every now and then it happens. But that should not ever be a habit. All right. Now, the last thing that I want to share with you is some debt traps that you want to avoid. Please avoid these things. High interest credit cards. Avoid them like the plague. Now, I know some people are like, well, I'm credit building, and so that's all I can qualify for is these high interest credit card rates. Okay. If you just have to do that, recognize how high the interest rate is. Make sure that you have a plan, okay, that whatever you purchase on that card, you can repay before all that interest hits you. Are y'all hearing me? Don't go consume a bunch of stuff that yields you no return and you have no plan, because I'm telling you that 28%, 29%, 30%, 32%, 34% interest hits you. It is relentless. It is relentless. Okay. So avoid any high interest credit cards, payday loans. Avoid those like the plague. Okay. I was in my 20s. I had gotten myself caught up in that circle. It took me a couple years to get up out of that circle. Okay. It was never what I intended, but I didn't understand how interest and all that. I didn't understand how all that worked. Okay. Avoid it like the plague. Do not overly rely on credit for your daily expenses. This is what I was saying earlier. You drive up to Starbucks and you get a coffee or a tea, and you put on your credit card. Well, you probably shouldn't have had coffee or tea that day. Okay. You should have made it at home. All right. Listen, again, no judgment, because I've been there. I've done this stuff. Okay. I need your topic. Please send this to your page. Will do. So, yeah. Okay. Try not to over rely on credit for daily expenses. Okay? This is the reason why Last week we talked about allocating and budgeting, and the week before about, getting organized in your finances, and the importance of your overall financial plan, strategic plan. Okay. So that you won't have to do things like that. And then also avoid not having an emergency fund. You need an emergency fund. And I know most people are like, well, I don't even have anything left over each month to have an emergency fund. And so you're already thinking about this whole thing the wrong way, because you should be thinking an emergency fund. You should be thinking about that before you think about paying bills. Last week we talked about the category, the pay yourself first category, that profit first category that included emergency fund, opportunity fund, retirement, a general savings, college savings, those types of things. That gets taken care of after God's kingdom, which, by the way, is giving to the poor, to the poor. After that, pay yourself first, then other stuff, right? So again, watch last week if you missed it. Okay, so we want to make sure that we have healthy habits. We want to have healthy habits. Watch this series, okay, from beginning to end. Go back and catch the previous ones if you have not, because I am giving you actionable tips. They are healthy habits that you can implement in your finances so that you stay out of bad debt, okay? Everything, remember, at MM4H, all is bad debt, okay? Unless you know how to leverage that debt where it yields a return for you and you can pay off the debt and still have some left over. If we don't do that, it's all bad debt. That's how we operate over here. All right, one last Bible reference I'm going to give you, Proverbs chapter 22, verse 26 to 27. Do not be one who shakes hands in pledge or puts up security for debts. Don't put up security for debts. If you lack the means to pay, your very bed will be snatched from under you. What does that mean? People sometimes will take out like their car title loans. They will put up their house. They will put up all kinds of things. And because you cannot afford to pay it back, what happens? You lose that stuff. People may do this with pawn shops, right? I'm going to go get a loan from the pawn shop. They have collateral, right? Whatever that item is. You really weren't trying to lose that item, but you don't have a way to repay it, so you lose the item, right? That is irresponsible, okay? This verse warns against taking on debt irresponsibly or acting as a guarantor, okay, on loans that you cannot afford to pay. People coming to ask you to co-sign or be a guarantor, and you know that if something happened to them, you can't even afford to pay it, you shouldn't be co-signing. I have a whole thing anyway about co-signing. Anyway, I want to hear from you. What are your mastering debt stories, right? I want to hear if you've used the strategies we talked about today and it's been successful for you. I want to hear about it. If you have questions about anything we talked about today, please drop those questions in the comments or DM me, and I am happy to answer your questions. Okay. I want to thank you all for tuning in today. And I want to pronounce this blessing over all of those that are listening, whether you're listening live or you're catching the replay at some point down the line. Deuteronomy 28:12, I want to pronounce this over to you, that the Lord will open the heavens, the storehouse of his bounty, to send rain on your land in season and to bless all the work of your hands. You will lend to many nations, but will borrow from none. That is the blessing that I want to pronounce over you. That is the word of God. It's not my blessing. It is the word of God. Okay. I want to encourage you. Live a debt-free life. Master debt. Okay. So that you can enjoy the blessings of financial freedom. You can enjoy moving about in God's kingdom, focused on doing what he has called you to do, because you don't have those worries about finances, right? I also want to hear what strategies Are you, I said this already. What strategies are you using? Have you used it successfully? Why not? Or if you've never used these strategies, will you use one? Which one? Why? Okay, I want to hear from you. So make sure if you're on YouTube that you subscribe. Okay, leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about the video. I am on social media at the Lexi Johnson everywhere. Okay, and that's it, y'all. That's it for today. Let's get these finances together, okay? Because the Bible tells us that we, you, and I have the ability to create wealth. God bless.